Alright everyone, welcome to another tutorial presented by Code Cyclone, and tonight I'm actually going to show you guys something that I thought was cool anyways. I had a little bit of a brainstorming moment today when I was in one of my classes, and I thought about this gun we're going to go over today, the remote mine launcher. And pretty much what it's going to do is it's going to act like a rocket launcher and or grenade launcher for effectiveness sake, but it's going to have the cool feature that you can actually shoot the ground, plant some mines, and remote detonate them with the gun itself. So I'm going to show you how to do it. And first off, just before we get started, I had a fella message me and he was a little mad at me because one of the pieces of code I'd given you guys wasn't, 100% bug proof and all that stuff. And I just wanted to address something before we moved on, that this is more of a theory course. If I wanted to actually give you guys 100% working, foolproof, bug-free, code, hire me and I will write you bug-free code. You can't get everything for free. This is purely for the sole benefit of helping you guys learn the Unreal Engine. So if you don't like it, go somewhere else. For those of you that care to learn and just are here for the theory, then let's go ahead and move on. So first off, we're going to define a new gun, which I took our old one and just stripped out the names and the logic for it, so I went ahead and did that. And then I defined an array, which if you're not very programming savvy, I definitely would recommend learning what arrays are, either via Wikipedia or just some other medium. But in layman's terms, they're basically just a list. And in this case in particular, we have a dynamically sized array, so it's a list of variable size. It'll either grow or shrink as we tell it to. And it's an array of projectile mines, which is a class we'll define later, and I've called it mines. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to piggyback on the projectile fire, similar to what we did with the zoom out delay in the first gun, when you were scripting your first gun in that tutorial, where we first checked if they were zoomed in or not. If they were, we shot and did the delay. If not, we zoomed in. Same kind of idea here. So we're going to check if the current fire mode is 0. And if it is 0, we're going to go ahead and do a projectile fire. Now notice how I make sure that P is equal to that fire so that we get a reference to that pawn back. Then I'm going to add a mine, which is a function down here, which we'll get to in a sec. A mine, which is a GS projectile mine, and I'm casting P as that projectile mine and passing it into add mine. Now if that sounds confusing, it's okay. Pretty much what I'm doing is taking this standard type of projectile, because it's a UT projectile, telling this function that, hey, I want you to recognize that projectile as a projectile mine type, and pushing it into the add mine function, which is looking for a projectile mine type. Alright? So good so far. So the next, if it isn't current fire mode is equal to 0, it's got to be equal to 1, because it's the only other thing, primary alternate fire. If it's the alt fire, we're going to detonate the mines, which we'll get to in a second. And then after all that, we're going to return P, because it's in the definition of the function. Okay. Alright. So, add mine. Takes in a mine, all it does is it adds to our dynamic array one item, and it's that mine. Then it checks to make sure that the length of that array does not exceed 3. So if we have 4 mines or more, which it should never get past 4, then it's going to destroy the oldest mine. Alright, so the one that's on the bottom level of that array is going to be destroyed, and then it's going to be removed from the array list. Alright, so it's going to explode and then remove itself from the list, and we're going to keep moving on. Alright, now removing a mine, actually we don't even need this function. I don't even know why I wrote it, because this logic really is this right here. Whatever, we'll leave it just for the sake of it. You don't actually need this bit though. Alright, detonate mines. Okay, you know what, we're just going to close you. Okay, detonate mines, the one that's called from the alternate fire. Now what this does is it sets up an integer I, and it sets us up a projectile that I've called mine. And what we're doing is we're going to use a for loop to go through that array and detonate every single mine in order. So I'm doing a for loop from 0 to the length of the array, and I'm iterating one at a time. So mine is going to be equal to the mine in index I of mines. So the ith mine inside mines. If that mine is not null, or it's not equal to nothing, or has been destroyed, or something like that, then it's okay to destroy it. We won't have any warnings or any exceptions or anything like that, so we destroy it. Alright? Fair and simple. Okay. Now, the default properties. Short and simple. It's pretty much the same as the last gun. I only just switched out the names, like for the projectile. I made sure that the weapon fire types were both projectile fires so that it piggybacked properly. You may want to decrease the fire interval on this, just because you can click this faster, then you should be able to click this. So you can shoot mines slower, but you can detonate faster kind of deal. That's more or less up to you how you feel it should be, because, I mean, like I said, this is just a tutorial. This isn't, you know, how to do it in the real world. Okay. Alright, we make sure our attachment class 2, that's the other thing, that it's to our new attachment class, which if you go over here, should look very familiar to you, because it literally is the same one I used from the 9mm gun when we scripted our first weapon, and just switched out the names. So we got, you know, GS weapon mine launcher, and everything's the same. So let's move on. Now, the mine projectile. This is some things that you probably have not seen before. First off, process touch and landed. Process touch I took out just in case landed failed. So we're going to go to landed first and we'll come back to process touch. Pretty much what landed is when the physics engine detects that a mine or that a whatever has hit the ground, it's going to call this function, and it's a legacy physics function. And what I've done is, instead of calling it, normally in UT projectile it calls hit wall, which makes it explode. What I've done though is made a new function over here called stop all movement, and I've made the speed, the max speed, and the acceleration rate 0, so it just stands still, doesn't go anywhere. Alright, now the stop all movement I also added to process touch, because sometimes if you hit like a weird angle or something, it'll call process touch instead. I may be wrong in this, but just for the sake of having it, I put it in there just to make sure. So that they're both in there, and they both call stop all movement. Alright, we've already gone over that. Alright, the damage, actually, we'll have to switch that out in just a second, but that's alright. Yeah, I'll go ahead and do it real quick. Okay, so in the default properties, we defined our damage as 100. Damage radius you actually want to add to this time because it's an exploding type weapon. I've lowered the speed, the max speed, and the acceleration a little bit so it's not super fast. I've also chucked down the physics to physics falling. If you've never seen this before, don't worry about it. All this is saying is that when it renders or spawns the object, the physics engine is going to treat it as if it was always falling. But since we've added a velocity to it, it's going to be shot off in a certain direction, but over time it's going to be approaching the ground, or falling, you know, negative Z. Alright. Now the rest of this stuff I actually pulled from UT projectile, or UT proj underscore rocket. And the last thing you have to do, which is really important, is make your lifespan huge. To my knowledge, UT does not actually allow you to just leave projectiles lying around. It actually judges it by a range, which is calculated off that variable. So to make sure that it stays okay, we made it really big. Okay. Now, the damage type, I mean, it's literally the same one I used from the last gun. You can actually see the weapon class I didn't even switch over, which I guess I should do that, shouldn't I? So I'll go ahead and do that real quick. Alright, so that's good to go. And then finally, we need to go into GS Game and switch out the default inventory to make sure we pull up our mine launcher and just switch out the name for it. So that should be good. Okay. Finally, let's go ahead and make sure all this compiles, which it should. And good. Everything's there. Okay, cool. So anyways, while this is preparing itself for launch, hopefully you guys are doing okay on the first challenge with the reflecting shield. I've only gotten a few messages about it, so hopefully the rest of you guys are still working on it, and when it comes around to that time to actually see what you guys got done, you know, hopefully I'll be impressed, see how you guys have been progressing, and hopefully you've been able to pick up most of the issues that were involved in that shield. So we'll see. Figure I'll probably give you guys a week or two more on that just to see what's going on, and then we'll take a look at what everyone's been up to. Okay, so game mode, generic shooter. We can actually just leave hallway, that's fine. Also, the city square map I just made for the heck of it, just so we have another place to go to instead of this little dinky hallway. There's nothing special about it. Because one guy was asking me when we made that, and it's just, I did it out of boredom. Alright, so let's test this thing out. So, alternate fire does nothing, but primary fire on the other hand, when we shoot, if we hit a wall it should explode, and it does. That should also go for pawns and other things, but if we shoot the ground, see how they stick? And if we right click, actually better yet, if we shoot a fourth one, you'll see the first one explode, which it does. If we right click, they all explode. It's pretty neat, isn't it? And I mean, it seems kind of like a complicated weapon, but it really isn't in the grand scheme of things. Hopefully the logic I laid out for you guys, you know, allows you to see that it's not that complicated to build something that, you know, that entertaining, because that kind of weapon, like, if you played TF2, the Demo Man Sticky Launcher is one of the most useful things you can ever play with. So, hopefully you guys had fun. I know I did in building this little thing. It only took, you know, about 20 minutes to actually figure out the code and whatnot and get it running. So, thank you guys for checking in, and hope you enjoyed the gun.